Before we begin, this video is made with respect to the 228 passengers and crew of Air France 447 and their families. This was not just a technical failure, but a human tragedy and a lesson to help future pilots prevent it from happening again. Air France 447 was an Airbus A330 flying from Rio de Janeiro to Paris, carrying 228 people across the Atlantic. At 2:10 a.m., the aircraft entered a zone of severe thunderstorms, something long-haul flights routinely encounter. But inside these clouds, at exactly 2:10:05 a.m., something critical happened. The aircraft's pitot tubes, small sensors that measure airspeed, became obstructed by ice. Almost instantly, the plane's speed readings became inconsistent. With unreliable data, the autopilot disconnected. The pilots were now manually flying, in total darkness, at 35,000 feet, inside a storm. But this was just the beginning. Critical mistake. Seconds after the autopilot disengaged, one of the pilots pulled back on the control stick. The aircraft began to climb rapidly. What the pilots believed was happening was that the aircraft was overspeeding. But in reality, the plane was losing speed dangerously fast. Within moments, the aircraft entered a stall. A warning sounded repeatedly, but in the confusion, it wasn't correctly understood, and this is where everything went wrong. For the next 3 minutes and 30 seconds, the aircraft wasn't diving, it was falling. The nose remained pitched upward. The engines were still producing thrust. There was no structural failure, yet the aircraft was descending at over 10,000 feet per minute. Inside the cockpit, the pilots were trying to climb, pulling back harder, making the situation worse. At one point, one pilot says, "I don't understand what's happening." Another responds, "We've lost control." What they didn't realize was that the aircraft was still flyable. All they needed to do was lower the nose. But they never recognized the stall. At 2:14 a.m., after falling from 35,000 feet, Air France 447 struck the Atlantic Ocean. All 228 people on board were lost. There was no distress call, no recovery, just silence. The wreckage would not be found for nearly 2 years. When the black boxes were finally recovered, investigators discovered the full sequence of events. The aircraft had remained in a stall the entire time. This accident exposed critical issues in pilot training, automation dependency, and stall recognition at high altitude. Things were about to change across the entire aviation industry. Air France 447 changed aviation forever, but it left behind one unsettling truth. The aircraft was never beyond saving, and in those final minutes, they didn't realize it.